The door burst open again, but it wasn't him. It was just another nurse checking vitals. "Where is he?" Kinley rasped, voice raw from screaming, heart raw from betrayal. The nurse blinked. "You're... No," she whispered, curling into herself. "My husband." Her breath hitched as another contraction rolled through her like a wrecking ball. Her phone buzzed again on the tray table. "Welcome to CedarLight Love Stories, where every tale shines with passion, hope, and the magic of true connection. Love speaks in many ways, sometimes softly, sometimes with fire, but always from the heart. What's your definition of real love? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more heart-touching stories, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a spark of love's light." Finally, a text. She reached for it, hand trembling, hope fluttering like a wounded bird. But the screen didn't show love. It showed departure. "I can't do this. I'm leaving. With her. This isn't the life I want." She read it 3 times, and still, nothing made sense. She stared at the words until her vision blurred. Her body kept convulsing. Her babies kept coming. But the man she trusted with her forever had decided to disappear mid-labor. Cowardice didn't knock on the door. It texted. She sobbed, clutching her belly as another contraction twisted through her. "You said you'd be here," she whispered into the empty space. "You promised." And then, a voice she didn't recognize but instantly trusted. "You're not alone, Kinley. I'm right here." She turned her head toward the foot of the bed. A man stood there in surgical blues, eyes steady, voice smooth as evening thunder. Dr. Santiago Reyes. She'd met him once, maybe twice. A pediatric trauma surgeon covering delivery support on rotation. He wasn't supposed to be here, and yet, he was. "Deep breaths," he said gently, placing a hand on the bed rail, not on her, never uninvited. "You're not abandoned. You're delivering miracles." Her entire body shuddered. I can't do this alone." Santiago didn't flinch. "Then don't. Do it with me." Another wave hit. She screamed, tears spilling down both cheeks now. Santiago stayed calm, guiding her breathing, nodding in rhythm. One more push. She pushed. Pain split her world apart. And then, sound. A cry. Fierce. Alive. Defiant. "It's a boy," Santiago announced, lifting the baby with practiced awe. Strong lungs. Good tone. The nurse handed Kinley her son. He was pink and tiny, eyes shut tight, fists already balled like he was ready to fight for her. She kissed his forehead through her tears. But the contractions didn't stop. Another one tore through her. "There's another coming," a nurse said. Santiago nodded. "Twins, right?" Kinley could barely speak, but she nodded. This time Santiago moved closer, his voice low and grounding. "Breathe with me." She met his eyes, dark, unwavering. He breathed in. She followed. He counted. She obeyed. And then, another cry. Twin. Boy. A second miracle in the same hour she'd been betrayed. Santiago smiled softly, voice tender. "Jonah and Noah?" Her lip trembled. "You remembered?" "I remember everything I shouldn't," he said with a slow, private smile. The boys were wrapped in warm cotton, cradled gently against her chest. Skin to skin, heart to heart, 2 lives now tethered to hers in ways she couldn't yet understand. And a doctor, who wasn't supposed to stay, refusing to leave. Later, when the nurses had taken the boys to the nursery, Kinley woke to find the room dimly lit. The pain had dulled to a numb ache. The silence felt heavier now, until she noticed something at her bedside. A single white desert lily resting in a crystal vase. Beside it, a handwritten note in steady cursive. "Your boys are perfect. And so are you. The most exquisite blossoms grow in the harshest deserts." Santiago, she didn't know whether to weep or breathe. Instead, she whispered aloud, to no one but herself. "Why does a stranger feel safer than the man I gave everything to?" The hallway outside Kinley's room was too quiet. The kind of quiet that crept under skin and whispered shame into the ears of the broken. Inside, she lay curled to one side, still wearing the hospital gown. Her arms folding across her chest, not for warmth, but protection. Then, the soft knock, not forceful, not medical, not urgent, just respectful. She turned. Santiago stood in the doorway, no scrubs this time. Jeans, gray Henley shirt, hair wet like he'd just showered, holding a clear takeout container with what looked like lemon chicken and roasted sweet potatoes. "I figured you hadn't eaten," he said gently. Kinley blinked. "I'm not really hungry." He stepped in slowly, placed the food on the tray table without pushing. "I get it," he said, voice low. "Shock does that." She looked at him for a long moment. "Why are you still here?" His answer was immediate. "Because you shouldn't be waking up alone after what you just did. You delivered 2 human beings," he said, pulling up the visitor's chair. "And you did it under betrayal. That's not nothing." Kinley let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You make it sound like I won a war." Santiago gave her a small smile. "You did. Your body broke open to create life. That's more powerful than anything I do in an or." She hesitated. "You're not just being kind, are you?" His brows lifted. "No, I'm being honest." Silence hung for a moment. Then she asked, "Do you talk to all your patients like this?" He shook his head. "Only the ones who name their twins, Jonah and Noah. That earns a bonus round." That pulled a laugh from her, a weak, trembling thing, but real. "I remember seeing your eyes," Kinley whispered, "during the birth. Everything else was chaos, but your eyes, they didn't move." Santiago's voice softened. "Because you needed stillness, not panic, not pity, just presence." Kinley blinked fast. "You've done this a lot?" He nodded. "Yeah. But not like this." She waited. Let the silence pull meaning out of his restraint. Finally he said, "Most of the time I'm fixing broken kids. I see the end of tragedy, not the beginning of something sacred." She leaned back against the pillow. "So why did this feel different?" He looked at her, long and deliberate. "Because no one should have to survive joy alone." As she reached for her water bottle, something fell to the floor. The folded note. She picked it up slowly, thumb brushing the soft corner. "Did you mean this?" she asked, holding it up. Santiago leaned forward. Every word. Kinley stared down at it, reading it again like scripture. "Your boys are perfect. And so are you. The most exquisite blossoms grow in the harshest deserts." She looked up. "Where did that come from?" He shrugged one shoulder. "I grew up out here. I've seen wildflowers break through dry stone." "Reminds me of you." Her voice caught. "He left me, Santiago, during labor. He walked out because I got pregnant." Santiago nodded once. No surprise. No judgment. And still he said, "You gave life. That's not weakness. That's royalty." Tears slipped down her cheeks. Not loud. Not gasping. Just silent release. "You don't have to cry alone," he said softly. He didn't offer a hug. He didn't reach for her. But something about his stillness, his refusal to rush her, felt like an embrace. Kinley leaned her head back against the pillow. "You should go," she said quietly. Santiago stood up slowly. "If that's what you want." She stared at the ceiling. "I don't know what I want, but I know I don't want to feel abandoned again tonight." His voice was steady. "Then I'll sit out in the hallway, just in case." She turned her head toward him. "Why?" He paused. "Because you shouldn't have to ask for someone to stay." The clock on the hospital wall blinked 2:47 a.m. The hallway light leaked through the glass panel of her door, soft and unobtrusive. Kinley turned restlessly, arms folded, gown sticking to the curve of her back. Her body ached, but not from the delivery. It ached from the emptiness he left. Not just her ex-husband, but the idea of him, the fantasy of someone who would hold her through the hard parts of life. And didn't. The folded note was still by her bedside, weighed down by a cup of untouched ice water. She didn't read it again. She didn't need to. The most exquisite blossoms grow in the harshest deserts. She wondered how a man who barely knew her had written something that understood her. A soft tap sounded again. She expected a nurse, but when the door eased open, it was him. Santiago, wearing the same Henley shirt from earlier, only now paired with sneakers and a tired smile. "I was going to check if you needed anything," he said, voice low, respectful. "But if you're resting..." Kinley blinked. "I'm not..." He hesitated. "I'm parked outside, but I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking maybe you couldn't either." She studied him, eyes searching for expectation, for hidden motives. She found none. "Come sit," she said quietly. He sat beside her bed. Not close, not invasive, just present. "You didn't have to come back," she said. "I know," he replied. "But you did." Santiago nodded once. "Because I wanted to." She looked away. "I'm not used to that." "To what?" "People staying without asking for something in return." Santiago's hands rested in his lap. "Then maybe it's time you got used to better." The quiet between them wasn't awkward. It pulsed with unsaid things. With questions like, "Why do I trust you already? Why do I feel safer now than I did for the last 3 years of my marriage?" But Kinley didn't ask those questions. She just said, "You're not married?" He smiled faintly. "Divorced. 3 years ago. Kids? None of my own," he said. "But hundreds I've stitched back together." She chuckled lightly. "You ever think about it?" "Every day." That landed heavier than she expected. Her voice dropped. "Why are you still here, Santiago?" He looked at her, not with desire, not even with pity, with knowing. "Because some people need someone to stay even after the bleeding stops." Her breath caught. That wasn't a flirt. It was a vow. "I named them before they were born," she said suddenly. "Jonah and Noah." He nodded. "The names meant something?" "Jonah was the one I feared would never make it. And Noah?" She smiled through the tears streaking her cheek. "Peace. I wanted him to be my peace." "And are they?" he asked gently. She nodded. "They're everything. But I'm terrified I won't be enough." Santiago didn't flinch. He just leaned forward slightly, elbows on knees. "You will be," he said. "Because you already are." The nurse peeked in for final vitals. Santiago stood to leave. But Kinley's voice stopped him. "Will I see you again?" He looked down at her, jaw soft, eyes steady. "You'll never have to wonder." He reached into his pocket and placed something beside the note. Not a number, not a gift. A small photo print of the boys, just minutes after delivery. "You deserve to see it first," he said. Then walked out, leaving nothing behind but his scent. And a steadying presence Kinley didn't know she'd come to crave. The Arizona heat pressed down like a heavy sigh, thick and unmoving. But the children didn't notice. Jonah and Noah tore across the dusty green of the community park, their matching dinosaur, sneakers kicking up clouds of red dust as they roared at each other through. Cardboard helmets, their laughter, wild and unfiltered, carried beyond the playground, beyond the splash pad, beyond the cracked picnic tables that had seen better summers. Kinley adjusted her camera lens from under a shaded gazebo, crouched behind, a light reflector she'd borrowed from the photo studio downtown. Today's shoot was for a young couple celebrating their engagement, but her eyes kept drifting to two fast-moving bodies wrapped in endless joy. Jonah's shriek pierced the quiet of the lens focus as he tripped over his brother's cardboard tail, landing with a thud. "Jonah," Kinley called, rising halfway. But before she could take a step, another figure was already running. Santiago reached the boy just as he sat up, dirt on his elbow and confusion on his face. "You okay, astronaut?" Santiago asked. Jonah blinked. "We're dinosaurs." "My bad," Santiago said, brushing the dust from the boy's arm. "Dr. Dino, then." Jonah laughed, a hiccup of relief. From behind the lens, Kinley exhaled. 4 years had passed. 4 long, brimming, unpredictable years. And somehow, Santiago had been there for almost every significant one of them. Not in declarations or commitments, but in the slow, steady cadence of someone who just showed up. There was no title, no official role, no labels. But he knew the boys' snack preferences. He had memorized their favorite bedtime story voices. He knew the difference between Noah's silent tantrums and Jonah's loud ones. Kinley didn't call him partner. She just called him when she needed help, and he always answered. She focused back on the couple now posed under the sycamore tree. Click. Adjust. Click. Smile. Click. But her thoughts wandered. She remembered the ER visit 6 months ago when Noah, curious as ever, swallowed a shiny coin. The panic, the rush, the guilt she hadn't spoken aloud. And Santiago, already scrubbed in from a surgery, still finding a way to be there. Holding her hand as they waited for x-rays, stroking her wrist with 2 fingers like it was instinct. "I've seen children choke on all kinds of things," he'd said back then, voice low. "But I've never seen a mother hold her breath this long." She had looked at him like someone remembering a dream that once made her cry. "You're not alone, Kinley. Not anymore." It wasn't what he said. It was the way he said it, like he meant it in ways that had nothing to do with medicine. She hadn't responded that night, just nodded, let the silence hang between them like a suspended breath. But something shifted. Quietly, permanently. Back at the park, the engagement couple packed up, thanking her for the shots. She offered them a smile, promising a turnaround time of 3 days. Professional, efficient, focused. They walked away, hand in hand. Kinley turned and found Santiago seated in the grass, the boys now building what looked like a rocket ship out of cardboard, duct tape, and empty juice boxes. He was on his back, letting them tape a straw to his forehead while explaining the basics of gravity in Spanish and English. "Careful," he said, as Jonah climbed onto his stomach to reach the rocket's top. "I'm not certified for orbital launch." The boys giggled. Kinley watched from a distance. For a long while, she didn't move. 4 years ago, she'd lain in a hospital bed with 2 infants and no idea what came next. Now she had 2 wild, fearless sons and a man who never once promised forever, but gave her every moment like it belonged to her. Her phone buzzed. A client asking about rescheduling. She typed a quick reply, then lifted her camera and aimed it toward them, her boys, and the man who kept showing up. Santiago looked up at that moment, catching her in the act. He grinned. "Don't even think about selling this to NASA." She laughed. Too late. "I already sent it to headquarters." He sat up, brushing grass off his jeans. "How was the shoot?" "Good," she said. "They're young, in love, all dreams, no scars yet." Santiago raised a brow. "You say that like scars ruin love." She thought about it. "I don't know. Maybe they make it harder." "Or maybe," he said, looking at the boys now climbing a bench, "they make it real." She nodded slowly. Jonah jumped off the bench and ran toward her, dirt-streaked and breathless. "Mom, I want to show you our space car." Kinley crouched and opened her arms. "Let me see it, champ." He pulled her by the hand toward their cardboard masterpiece. Noah followed, grabbing Santiago's arm. "Come too, Doc." Kinley caught Santiago's eye. "No need to say thank you. Not again." He already knew. When the sun started to set, casting golden light across the red earth, the cardboard rocket stood half-assembled but fully admired. Santiago helped load it into the trunk of Kinley's car. The boys begged to take it home. He fastened Jonah's seatbelt and smoothed Noah's tangled hair. Kinley stood by the open door, watching him, heart tight. "You free tomorrow?" she asked. Santiago straightened. "Always." The word landed softly, not dramatic, not forced, just real. She nodded. "There's a new family I'm shooting at the lake. Want to come?" He smiled. "Wouldn't miss it." She drove off with the boys hollering about galaxies in the back seat. Santiago stood in the parking lot, watching the taillights fade, hands in his pockets, face unreadable. But Kinley didn't check the mirror. She didn't need to wonder if he'd be there tomorrow. He always was. The emergency room wasn't loud. It was tense. That kind of tension that holds its breath and makes time stretch, tighten, stall. Kinley paced the far end of the hallway, arms crossed, her lower lip bruised from biting it. A nurse had tried reassuring her. Twice. It didn't help. Inside the exam room, Santiago moved with quiet command. Gloves on, eyes sharp, movements efficient. Noah, just under 4 years old, lay calmly now, drowsy, sedated, small. A penny, swallowed in curiosity, had made its way to a place it shouldn't have, and panic had sent Kinley into a tailspin. "Why do you leave coins on the floor?" She had shouted at herself in the car. How could I be so careless? She didn't remember the drive to the hospital. She only remembered her hands shaking so badly she couldn't unlock her phone. And then, Santiago, already there, already taking charge, already steady. She sat now in a cold plastic chair by the corridor window, hands still trembling. The door opened. "Kinley," he called gently. She shot to her feet. "He's fine," Santiago said, removing his gloves. "We didn't have to operate. The X-ray showed it's in his stomach now. It'll pass." Her knees gave slightly, but she caught herself. "Are you sure?" "I am." Her shoulders dropped. Her lungs remembered how to work. He led her back to the room. Noah was half asleep, tiny fingers wrapped around a stuffed bunny the nurse had found. Kinley moved to the bed, brushing hair from his forehead. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Santiago stepped closer but didn't interrupt. "You're doing your best," he said after a while. "It wasn't enough." "It was. Because you got him here in time, and you didn't freeze. You didn't panic." She looked up at him, eyes glossy. "Then why do I feel like I failed?" He crouched beside her. "Because you love him so much, your brain can't tell the difference between fear and failure. That did it." The tears came fast, messy, unfiltered. "I should have seen it. I should have known he would." "You're human, Kinley." She nodded, wiping her face, but the tears didn't stop. Santiago gently reached out, his fingers brushing her wrist. "That's all. Just a simple touch." But it grounded her more than anything else in that sterile room. "You can cry," he said. "You've earned it." She didn't answer. She just leaned forward, forehead resting on the side of the hospital bed, one hand holding Noah's, the other gripping Santiago's arm like she might fall without it. He stayed, kneeling, not speaking, not rushing her, just there. Minutes passed, maybe longer. When she finally looked up, he was still beside her, palm resting on her shoulder now. Warm, assured. "I don't think I'm cut out for this," she whispered. He tilted his head. "You say that every time something hard happens?" She shook her head. "No, just this time." He smiled gently. "Then maybe this is the moment you finally admit how strong you actually are." "I don't feel strong." "You don't have to feel it for it to be true." She closed her eyes. For once, the hospital didn't feel like a place where people lost things. It felt like a place where something began. They stayed like that until a nurse stepped in to check on Noah's vitals. "You want coffee?" Santiago asked once they stepped into the hallway again. Kinley hesitated. "Will it make me feel like less of a disaster?" "No," he said, "but it might stop your eyelids from giving up." She smiled, barely. They walked to the vending machine. Santiago pulled $2 bills from his wallet, folded neatly. "I have cash," she offered. He shook his head. "Tonight, I'm covering caffeine." She leaned against the wall. "You always know what to say." "I don't," he admitted, "but I listen long enough to get close." She sipped the weak coffee. "This is terrible. I wasn't promising flavor, just distraction." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Santiago looked at her carefully. "You know," he said, "you never asked me why I stayed that night. The night you gave birth. I figured you were doing your job. I was off shift." She turned to face him. "So why did you stay?" "Because you looked like someone who'd been abandoned enough for one lifetime." She looked away. "I still remember how you held both of them," she said. "You didn't look scared. Most people would have looked scared. I've seen worse. But never anything more beautiful." Kinley's voice dropped. "You barely knew me." "I knew enough." He turned then, tossing the empty cup into the bin. "Let me drive you home." "No," she said. "I drove, and Noah needs his seat. I meant I'd follow you. Make sure you get back safe." She stared at him for a long second, then nodded. When they reached the car, Santiago leaned against the driver's door before she could open it. "I'm not trying to be anything you're not ready for," he said. "But I want you to know, there hasn't been a day since that hospital night that I didn't hope you'd let me in." She didn't reply. He stepped back, gave her space to choose. She opened the door, strapped Noah in gently, then turned back. "I'm not ready," she said honestly. "That's okay, but I'm starting to wish I was." Santiago's face softened. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That night, after getting Noah into bed, Kinley stared at the ceiling, not with dread, but with a growing awareness that something in her life was changing, not all at once, but steadily, one act of presence at a time. The night air curled around Kinley's balcony like smoke, warm, still, and silent. Phoenix nights had a way of clinging to the skin, but this one felt different. It wasn't just the temperature. It was the anticipation humming between two wine glasses resting on a glass table, untouched for 10 minutes too long. Santiago sat across from her, legs stretched out, one ankle crossed over the other. He wasn't talking, but he wasn't uncomfortable either. That was what unnerved her most. The silence didn't push him away. He lived in it. Kinley looked down at her glass. Her fingers hadn't moved from the stem since she poured it. "Did you always want to be a doctor?" she asked, finally. Santiago turned his head toward her, dark eyes steady in the shadows. "No. I wanted to be a pilot when I was a kid." She blinked. "Seriously?" He nodded. Planes made sense to me. You pull one lever, something happens, predictable. And medicine isn't? He chuckled. Not even close. But people, they matter more. Kinley leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. You're full of surprises. He glanced at her glass. You going to drink that? I don't know. I poured it to feel normal. Does it help? She shook her head. Not yet. The balcony felt quiet again, but it didn't feel awkward. It felt full. Full of things unsaid, full of feelings unnamed, full of moments neither of them were ready to claim. Kinley watched a moth throw itself against the porch light over and over again. She envied it, how it never questioned whether it had a right to chase the glow. I never thought I'd raise them alone, she said. Santiago didn't respond right away. He waited, gave her space to expand. She didn't. I had this picture in my head, she continued. A man at my side, holding my hand in the hospital, changing diapers, watching them grow. Did you love him? He asked, not unkindly. I thought I did, she said. But mostly, I loved the idea of not being left. That's not love, Santiago said. No, she whispered. It was fear. He looked up at the sky. Fear's a good liar, especially when it uses hope as its voice. She stared at him. You're not what I expected, she said. I get that a lot. Do women fall for you on the regular? He smiled without amusement. Some try. But I don't offer promises, only presence. She studied him. Why haven't you made a move? It's been 4 years. Because I've seen what happens when men touch someone who's still learning to trust. That landed like a quiet explosion in her chest. You think I'm still broken? He turned his gaze to her then, sharp and unflinching. I think you've been surviving so long, you forgot what soft feels like. Kinley's lips parted. The wind moved her curls across her cheek, but she didn't brush them away. She didn't know what to say. I'm not here to fix you, he said. I just want to know you. She swallowed. I don't know if I remember who I am. He didn't flinch. Then maybe we find her together. The silence that followed was different now. Thicker, loaded. Kinley reached for her wineglass but didn't drink. She set it down, stood slowly, and walked to the railing. She placed both hands on the metal and leaned forward, letting the heat settle into her bones. I'm afraid of needing someone, she said, because the last time I did, he left me in a delivery room. Santiago didn't move. He stayed seated, watching her in profile. Then don't need me, he said. Want me. That's enough. She turned to him, back still against the railing. And if I can't figure out the difference, I'll wait until you can. Something inside her shifted. She walked back to her chair and sat again. Not because she had something to say, but because she didn't want him to leave. Santiago leaned forward, elbows on his knees. What are you most proud of? She thought for a moment. I didn't give up, she said. When I wanted to, I didn't. He nodded. That's enough to build an entire life on. She looked at him, really looked at him. Tired eyes, stubble softening. His jawline, one shirt sleeve rolled up slightly higher than the other. Do you think people like us get to be happy? I don't think happiness is a reward, he said. I think it's a rhythm. Her brow furrowed. What does that mean? It's not something you find. It's something you return to, like a song that always finds its way back to the chorus. She sat with that, a long while. When she finally spoke again, her voice was quieter. Would you stay for a while? You don't have to talk, just stay. He didn't say yes. He just leaned back, folded his hands and stayed. The moth kept throwing itself at the light. The wine remained untouched. And Kinley didn't feel alone for the first time in a very, very long time. The first thing Kinley noticed was the silence. No toys clattering against tile. No juice boxes being opened with too much force. No dinosaur roars echoing down the hall. Just silence and space. Jonah and Noah had gone to spend the weekend with her best friend Yanni. It was the first time in months she'd had more than 4 hours without them. The quiet had felt overwhelming at first, then indulgent, then lonely. She'd sent Santiago a text earlier that afternoon. Kids are gone. House is weirdly still. You doing anything tonight? His reply came 4 minutes later. Got a bottle of wine and nowhere to be. See you at 8. It was 8:07 when he knocked. Kinley opened the door wearing a deep green sundress, hair in soft waves, no makeup. She hadn't planned to dress up, but something inside her had wanted to feel like more than mom for one night. Santiago stepped in, holding a bottle of agave wine and a paper bag with takeout from her favorite Thai place. "You're 7 minutes late," she teased, taking the bag from him. He looked around the house. Toys were tucked away. The coffee table was clean. Candles burned low in the corner. "You cleaned," he said. "I decluttered," she corrected. "Felt like my brain was too loud for mess tonight." He handed her the wine. "Then let's mute the noise." They ate on the balcony again. Plates balanced on their laps, bare feet up on the low table. The wind carried faint scents of desert sage and distant grills. Kinley wasn't a drinker, but she liked how the wine warmed her stomach. It made the silence between their sentences feel less like waiting and more like comfort. Santiago leaned back in his chair, half-full glass resting against his chest. "I miss this," he said. "This?" Breathing slow. She smiled. "You're not exactly the high-strung type." He shrugged. "Hospitals wear a man thin. It's why I never bring them with me." She looked at him then, not like a friend or co-parent or weekend visitor, but like a man. "You always carry the weight of everything so quietly," she said. "I'm just not loud about my scars." She studied his face. "Where are they?" "Here," he said, tapping the side of his head. "And one on my back from a car wreck 6 years ago. I flipped off a bridge in Tucson, walked away with metal in my spine and a new religion." "Which one?" "Gratitude." She laughed softly. "That one's hard to practice. That's why I chose it." He stood suddenly, not abruptly, just naturally, walked to the edge of the balcony and looked out over the neighborhood lights. Kinley joined him after a moment, arms crossed, wineglass forgotten on the table. "Do you ever get lonely?" she asked. Santiago's eyes didn't leave the horizon. "Sometimes, but I don't fear it like I used to. It's honest." She tilted her head. "You think solitude is honest? Loneliness tells you the truth about who you miss." She nodded. "Let the weight of that settle. Who do you miss?" He didn't answer right away. Then finally, he turned to her. "Lately, you." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. He wasn't trying to seduce her. It wasn't a line. It was quieter than that. Closer to confession than pursuit. She turned her body to face him. They were inches apart now, and neither of them stepped back. "I don't know what we are," she whispered. "You don't need to," he said. "Just know I'm not leaving." She looked down at her hands. "I'm afraid of this." "I know. What if I mess it up? Then we'll clean it up together." Kinley breathed in slowly, then lifted her gaze to meet his. "You're patient. I'm present." Her heart pounded harder than it should have. She didn't want to move too fast, didn't want to mistake comfort for connection. But Santiago wasn't pushing. He was just there, and her body, traitorous and honest, leaned slightly forward. He didn't reach. He waited. She closed the space. Her lips touched his like a whisper, slow, searching, unsure. He didn't deepen the kiss. He mirrored her pace. Let her choose. Let her lead. When she finally pulled away, her cheeks were flushed, her breathing shallow. "I didn't plan for that," she said softly. "Neither did I." She stepped back, pressing a hand to her chest. "I think I need just a minute." He nodded. "Take 2. She walked back inside the apartment and leaned against the hallway wall. Her body was trembling, not from fear, from recognition, from 4 years of quiet yearning surfacing in one gentle collision. She wasn't used to soft. She was used to survival. But Santiago didn't ask for anything. He offered space, and somehow that made her want to fill it. The room had changed. Not the furniture, not the lighting, but something in the air. Kinley returned to the balcony after a few minutes. Her steps were slower, her pulse still loud in her ears. Santiago hadn't moved. He was standing by the railing, hands resting casually at his sides, giving her the room to decide what came next. She stepped into the open space between them. "I don't know how to do this," she said honestly. "You don't need a map," he replied. "We're not rushing anywhere." That was all it took. She reached up, placed her hand against his chest, just over his heartbeat. His eyes fluttered closed, but he didn't move, didn't shift the moment toward his rhythm. He waited for her. When she leaned up again, the kiss deepened, not from pressure but permission. Their mouths found each other in a slower language. Her fingers slid into the back of his hair as he tilted his head to receive her, and for the first time in years, Kinley felt herself fully present in the moment, not surviving it, but choosing it. He pulled back first, not far, just enough to look at her. His voice was low, careful. "May I?" She nodded. That one word opened everything. He took her hand and walked them inside. No fanfare, no hurry. He let her lead. She guided him to the couch. Her hands unbuttoned the top of his shirt, slow and deliberate. Underneath was a scar she hadn't seen before, a faded crescent along his side. She traced it with her finger. "From the accident?" she asked. He nodded. "The seatbelt saved me. The edge of the door reminded me I'm not invincible." Her palm pressed flat against the mark. "It's part of you. So are yours," he said gently. She stilled, but he didn't name her scars, didn't ask to see them. He only let her know she didn't have to hide. When her sundress slid from her shoulders, he didn't rush to touch her. He looked first, with care, with awe. "You're beautiful," he said, not like a line, like a fact. She stepped out of the dress and stood in her underwear before him. No posing, no performance. Her body was that of a woman who had grown 2 lives inside it, who had raised boys alone, who had survived abandonment and still found a way to laugh in the daylight. Santiago reached for her waist, thumbs grazing the edges of her ribs. "Are you sure?" he asked. Yes. They moved together with the patience of people who knew how easily things could shatter. The kiss returned, this time deeper, anchored by the years of restraint that had built between them. His hands found her back, her thighs, her hips, with reverence, not hunger, worship. She let him lower her to the couch, her legs curled beneath his waist, her hands guiding him through the buttons of his shirt. He kissed her neck slowly, tasting her skin like a prayer, like her pulse was a map to something sacred. When she arched beneath him, her breath hitched, not in shock but relief. The moment they joined, there was no urgency. Every movement was measured, every touch deliberate. Their bodies spoke in a rhythm that felt older than either of them, like they'd known each other in lives before this one. Her fingers dug into his shoulders. His lips brushed her collarbone. She let herself moan, not to please him, to free herself. The crescendo was slow, building like a tide, crashing gently, then rising again. When she came apart beneath him, it wasn't explosive. It was quiet, shaking, full. Her name on his lips wasn't a sound. It was a promise. They didn't speak for a long time after. He lay beside her on the couch, arm beneath her neck, chest rising slowly. She rested her head against him, the pads of her fingers tracing circles on his forearm. "You okay?" he asked after a while. "Better," she whispered. Santiago shifted to face her. His hand cupped her jaw, thumb brushing her cheek. "You never have to perform with me. You know that, right?" "I didn't perform," she said. "I know. That's why I'll remember tonight." She swallowed. "I've never let anyone touch me like that, because no one's ever earned it." They stayed like that until the night was full and the wine had gone warm and forgotten. And in the silence of her small living room, with clothes half on and hearts fully open, Kinley allowed herself something radical. She believed him. Morning crept in slow, golden quiet. The soft light slipped through the gauzy curtains, brushing the living room in gentle streaks. Kinley stirred first, not from an alarm, not from a cry down the hallway, but from the rare experience of peace blooming in her chest. Her legs were still tangled with Santiago's. One of her hands rested against his stomach. His breath was slow, steady, grounding. She didn't move right away. She just listened to the rhythm of being held. It was new, but it didn't feel foreign. Santiago stirred, one arm flexing around her. "You're awake." "Barely." He adjusted slightly, careful not to break the closeness. "Did I snore?" She smiled against his skin. "Not that I noticed." "Good. That would have ruined my chances of ever being invited back." Kinley rolled onto her back, letting the ceiling meet her gaze. "You say that like you're not already part of this house." His eyes searched hers. "Am I?" "You're part of us," she said without hesitation. "You have been. For a while now." Santiago didn't respond right away. He reached over, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek, and let his fingers linger. "You've built something strong here," he said. "With those boys, with your business, with your strength. I didn't mean to. That's how the most beautiful things are made." She exhaled. "I've been surviving for so long I didn't realize I'd built anything at all." "You didn't just survive," he said. You created life. You raised them. You kept going. That's building. Kinley turned on her side to face him, pulling the throw blanket higher. Last night, that wasn't just about attraction. No, he said. It was about finally being seen. She blinked slowly. It was more than I thought I could feel again. He traced her shoulder lightly with his fingers, not in a way that led to more, but in a way that acknowledged what had already happened. You don't owe me anything, Kinley. I know. He leaned in and kissed her forehead. Then let's just be here, right now. She closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she whispered, You're not waiting for me to break, are you? He looked at her with soft clarity. No, I'm standing beside you while you bloom. The room fell into silence again, but it wasn't emptiness. It was stillness. Shared, respected. Kinley stood and reached for her robe. She tied it loosely, hair falling over one shoulder, and padded into the kitchen. The coffee pot started gurgling. A few minutes later, 2 mugs sat on the counter. Santiago walked in, shirtless, barefoot, watching her move like it was a private concert. You look, he started. She raised a brow. Careful. He grinned. I was going to say peaceful. I feel it. And that's rare. He walked over, took the coffee she handed him, and sipped. You think the boys are having fun with Yanni? They probably haven't thought about me since the car left her driveway. I doubt that. She leaned against the island. They adore you, you know. I adore them. Her fingers drummed against the side of her mug. Jonah told me last week that if you were their dad, he'd want a telescope for Christmas. Santiago smiled. Then I should probably brush up on constellations. Her gaze held his. You don't have to try so hard. I'm not trying, he said. I just care. Kinley looked down at her coffee. This house, this life, it's never been about just me. It's always been me and them. And for a long time, I didn't think anyone could walk into it without needing me to shrink first. You haven't shrunk. No, and I never will ask you to. She swallowed. You've said that before. I'll say it as many times as it takes until you believe it. Santiago set his cup down and stepped closer. He cupped the side of her face, tilting her chin up. I know what it means to carry the weight of 2 lives. I'm not here to take your strength. I'm here to match it. Kinley's voice was thin. What if I fall apart again? Then I'll be the ground beneath you. Her arms wrapped around his waist. Her forehead rested against his chest. And she didn't cry. Not this time. She simply breathed. They stood like that until the coffee cooled and the sun rose higher in the sky. Eventually, Santiago helped her wash the mugs, wiped down the counter, and kissed the top of her shoulder before stepping into the hallway. I should head out. Let you have your morning. She didn't stop him, but before he reached the door, she called out, Come back for dinner? He turned around. Always. She nodded, the quietest smile tugging at her lips. When the door clicked shut behind him, Kinley stood in the middle of her living room, surrounded by warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. She wasn't just seen, she was safe, and somehow that felt even more intimate than anything that happened the night before. The splash of water was followed by twin squeals of laughter. Kinley shaded her eyes from the sun and watched Jonah and Noah race through the shallow splash. Pad fountains, their matching swim trunks already soaked, hair sticking up in every direction. A cooler sat under the bench beside her, stuffed with juice boxes and cut fruit. She leaned back, letting herself relax into the heat, lulled by the soundtrack of childhood joy. It was one of those rare days where nothing pressed on her. No deadlines, no camera equipment, no missed calls. Just her sons and the steady hum of late summer. Santiago was supposed to meet them soon, after finishing a shift. The boys had been asking about him since breakfast. When is Doc coming? Jonah had asked, practically vibrating with excitement. Kinley had smiled. After lunch, he promised you a rocket popsicle and a race. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth sink in. That's when she heard it, a voice that didn't belong here. I remember when you used to smile like that for me. Her entire body tensed before her mind caught up. She opened her eyes and turned slowly. He was standing 10 feet away. Sunglasses, collared shirt unbuttoned too far, that same arrogant lean in his posture. But the years had settled heavily in the corners of his mouth, and the absence of integrity had carved hollowness behind his eyes. Conrad, she said flatly. He gave a little wave, stepping closer like they were casual friends. "Hey, Kin, don't call me that." "Okay, okay." He raised his hands slightly. "Just wanted to say hi and see my boys." She stepped in front of the bench instinctively, shielding the cooler, her bag, her space. "You've had 4 years to do that. I know. I'm not here to start a fight." Kinley crossed her arms. "Then don't come unannounced." "I didn't come for drama," he said. I was in town. Thought I'd stop by." "Where have you been?" she asked, voice tight. "When I was hemorrhaging on a hospital bed. When I signed birth certificates alone. When I worked double shifts to pay for preschool and shoes." Conrad shifted, sunglasses hiding whatever flicker crossed his face. "I wasn't ready." "No," she said. "You were selfish." He took another step forward, his voice softening like he thought charm still worked. "I've changed." She gave a dry laugh. "People who change don't need to announce it." Before either could speak again, a voice called out from behind. "Everything okay here?" Santiago. He was walking up the path, scrubs replaced by jeans and a dark t-shirt. Jonah was clinging to his forearm, smiling and wet. Noah was just behind them, running toward Kinley. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at Santiago. His eyes flicked to Conrad, then back to her. Conrad took off his sunglasses slowly. "And who's this?" Santiago set Jonah down gently. He stepped up beside Kinley, not too close, but close enough that his presence filled the space. "I'm Santiago Reyes." Conrad nodded once. "Friend?" "Present," Santiago said calmly. Kinley didn't miss the way his voice dropped ever so slightly, the way his jaw set. No posturing, no tension, just a subtle declaration. Conrad looked him over. "Doctor, huh?" "Pediatric trauma surgeon," Santiago said without flinching. Noah ran up and threw his arms around Kinley's waist. "Mom, I'm hungry." She brushed his wet curls. "Snack time in a second, baby." Jonah tugged at Santiago's hand. "Is he the man you said used to be my daddy?" The words hung in the air like a cracked bell. Conrad flinched. Just a blink. But it was there. Kinley said nothing. She didn't need to. Santiago didn't look at Conrad. He looked at Kinley. Then, slowly, subtly, he placed his hand at the small of her back. Not possessive, not aggressive. Just solid, just present. Jonah looked between the adults. "Can we go home now?" "Soon, sweetheart," Kinley said, voice even. Conrad cleared his throat. "Maybe we can talk sometime, Kinley. Just us." She stared at him for a long moment. "I think everything that needed to be said was said in your last text. That was years ago, and the memory is still fresh." Conrad opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. Santiago nodded toward the parking lot. "It's time to go." Kinley packed the cooler without looking back. She called to the boys, who didn't ask questions. They followed. Conrad stood there alone, hands in his pockets, watching the 4 of them walk away. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud, but it was final. The car ride home was unusually quiet. Noah, usually the chattier twin, sat in the back seat thumbing through his favorite storybook. Jonah looked out the window, his cheek resting against his fist. Kinley drove with one hand on the wheel, the other gripping her water bottle tighter than necessary. Santiago rode shotgun, legs relaxed, gaze steady on the road ahead. He didn't speak unless spoken to, but his presence filled the car like a buffer, absorbing the things no one quite knew how to say. When they pulled into the driveway, the boys unbuckled themselves and went inside without the usual bouncing and chatter. Kinley stayed seated. Santiago waited. "He has no right," she finally muttered. "He doesn't. Showing up like that. After everything." "I know. I should have seen it coming," she said. "I should have expected he'd show up eventually." "You did," Santiago said. "You just hoped you were wrong." She leaned her forehead against the steering wheel. "He looked at you like he wanted to erase everything you've done." "He couldn't," Santiago said simply. "He's too late." She turned her head to look at him. "That doesn't mean it won't still hurt them." "I know." Santiago didn't offer shallow comfort. He didn't try to rewrite the situation into something palatable. That's what made her trust him. He sat with her in the truth of it. Inside, the boys were on the couch, shoes kicked off, watching their favorite cartoon. The volume was low, too low for comfort. Kinley crouched in front of them. Boys, she said softly. Both looked at her. Jonah's eyes were sharper than usual. Noah's softer. Do you remember the man at the park? She asked. Noah nodded. He said he used to be our daddy, Jonah said. But I thought Doc was our daddy. Kinley felt the breath catch in her throat. Santiago stepped into the room, not interrupting, just grounding the space. She looked her sons in the eyes. Jonah, Noah, that man at the park, he's your biological father. That means he helped bring you into the world. But he didn't stay. Why not? Jonah asked. Kinley paused. Because some people leave, even when they're supposed to stay. And it hurts, but it doesn't mean you aren't loved. Noah blinked up at her. You stayed. She nodded. I will always stay. Jonah looked over at Santiago. Doc stayed too. Santiago walked closer and sat on the ottoman near them. I didn't just stay, he said. I chose to. I still choose to. Every day. Jonah tilted his head. Do you love us like a daddy? Santiago looked at Kinley, then back at the boys. Yes, very much, even if we're not yours. Noah asked, voice quieter now. You are mine, Santiago said. Not because of blood, because of time, because I care, because I show up. Jonah's face twisted with something new, confusion wrapped in understanding. Can you still be our daddy, even if that man was our first one? I'll be whatever you need, Santiago replied. Every single day. Noah climbed into Kinley's lap. Jonah leaned against Santiago. The room was still. Kinley closed her eyes, her arms wrapping around Noah tightly. Santiago placed a hand on Jonah's back, rubbing slow circles. Later, after the boys had gone to their room to build a pillow fort, Kinley and Santiago stood in the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching him pour water into a glass. Thank you, she said. He looked up. For what? For speaking to them like that, not promising things, just telling the truth. They deserve it. She nodded. I wasn't sure how I'd handle today. But when Jonah asked that question, Santiago finished her sentence. It cracked something open. Yeah. He walked over, placing the glass on the counter beside her. You didn't have to do that alone. I know, she said. But part of me thought I would. You don't anymore. She looked at him. This man who never overstepped but never stood too far back either. They see you, she said. Even when they don't have the words yet. I see them too. Kinley's throat tightened. That's what makes it different. Santiago touched her wrist lightly. You don't have to fight every ghost by yourself, Kinley. I'm not sure I remember how to do it any other way. Then I'll remind you. One memory at a time. She leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his chest. I wanted to protect them from ever feeling abandoned. You've done more than that. You've shown them what it means to be claimed. They stood like that, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the room. And for the first time since Conrad appeared, Kinley didn't feel like she was managing a crisis. She felt like she was raising a family, with someone who knew the weight of the role and carried it with pride. The boys were asleep. Jonah had curled up with a flashlight still on under his blanket. Noah had a sock puppet resting beside his cheek like a silent protector. Kinley stood at the bedroom doorway, watching them, arms folded against her chest. Santiago came up behind her and leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. They're good kids. They're mine, she whispered, voice soft and proud. They're lucky for that. She exhaled, brushing hair back from her face. Today was heavier than I expected. It had weight, he agreed. But you carried it well. Kinley turned to him slowly. The hallway light cast a glow between them, faint but warm. When Jonah asked you if you loved them like a dad, I meant every word. I know you did. She didn't look away. Neither did he. They walked together into the living room, silent until she sat at the edge of the couch and leaned her elbows onto her knees. I don't know what happens next, she said. Santiago sat beside her but left space, giving her the same quiet he always did, room to think without pressure. I know I can handle being a mom, she said. I know how to show up, how to make pancakes while half asleep, how to soothe skinned knees, how to answer the hard questions. But this part, the part with you, she paused, looking down at her hands. I'm afraid I'll forget how to let someone love me. Santiago didn't rush to respond. Instead, he reached across the space and took her hand. You don't have to know how to be loved, he said. You just have to be willing not to run from it. Her eyes searched his. What if I run anyway? Then I'll walk beside you until you're ready to stop." She blinked back the sting in her eyes. "How are you this calm?" she asked. He gave a quiet smile. "I've learned not to chase what isn't ready, but I also don't walk away from what matters." She stood up, paced once, then turned to face him fully. "I keep waiting for this to fall apart, for you to say it's too much, for them to ask questions I can't answer, for my past to catch up and ruin what we're building." Santiago stood too. He didn't touch her. "Not yet. You've spent years preparing for collapse," he said. "But this doesn't feel like something that wants to break." Her arms dropped to her sides. "I want to believe that." He stepped forward then, closing the distance slowly. He placed both hands on her arms, gentle and grounding. "I'm not asking for perfection. I'm not asking for promises you're not ready to give. I'm just here." Kinley took in a shaky breath. "And if I told you I'm falling for you?" she asked. He leaned in, his forehead touching hers. "I'd say it's about time." Her lips curved, just slightly. Santiago didn't kiss her. He waited. Kinley lifted her face and met his mouth halfway. The kiss was soft, deeper than the one they shared before, but still restrained. Not from doubt, from reverence. When they pulled apart, Santiago held her gaze. "No one defines this family but you, me, and the boys." Her voice cracked. "Say that again," he repeated, slow and certain. "No one defines this family but us." Tears welled in her eyes, not from pain, from the release of pressure she'd been carrying for far too long. Later that night, after the dishes were washed and the boys had rolled over in their sleep, Kinley and Santiago sat on the back patio beneath a sky crowded with stars. She rested her head on his shoulder. His arms circled her waist. They didn't speak for a while. There was no need to. What needed to be claimed had already been claimed. And he didn't do it loudly. He did it softly. The kind of soft that stays. The courtroom didn't intimidate Kinley. Not anymore. She'd faced far worse. Worse than fluorescent lights, worse than paperwork, worse than lawyers in pressed suits asking careful questions. She'd faced childbirth alone. She'd faced years of silent meals, empty bank accounts, and twin fevers with no one to tag in at 3 a.m. This was just a building. Conrad sat at the other table, legs crossed, suit a little too sharp for someone trying to play the role of a reformed father. His lawyer whispered something to him, and he nodded like it mattered. Kinley sat beside her attorney, back straight, hair pulled back into a low bun. Her blouse was clean. Her hands were steady. Santiago was one row behind her, wearing a dark shirt and slacks, his phone turned off, his expression unreadable. He didn't need to speak. He was here. That was enough. The hearing began. Conrad's lawyer stood first. His argument was rehearsed, worded for sympathy, a man who had made mistakes. A father trying to reconnect. A parent entitled to be part of his children's lives. Kinley didn't look at him. She looked at the judge. When her turn came, her voice didn't waver. "I'm not here to erase anyone's rights," she said. "But my sons don't know this man. He left before they took their first breaths. He sent a message and disappeared. He didn't call on their birthdays. He didn't show up when they were sick. He didn't contribute to diapers, school, or stability. He's here now because someone told him he still has a name on a birth certificate, not because he built a relationship." The judge asked questions. She answered every one. Then Conrad's lawyer mentioned Santiago. "He's not their legal guardian," the attorney said. "He's not their father." "He is," Kinley said, interrupting. Calm, clear. "He is in every way that matters. He's held their hands through fear. He's been in every audience at every recital. He's changed more sheets at 2 a.m. than their biological father ever will. My sons call him the man who stayed." The judge scribbled something down. Conrad sat back in his chair. His lawyer tried to object. The judge cut him off. "We're not determining custody today," she said. "This is about visitation, and right now, that doesn't require shared parenting. It requires proof of reliability, of presence, of effort." Kinley didn't move, didn't breathe. The judge looked at Conrad. "You may request supervised visits for the time being. You'll need to complete parenting courses and maintain a consistent schedule. We'll reconvene in 60 days. It was fair." Kinley nodded. Conrad stood, looked at her once across the room. No smugness this time, just a flicker of something unsteady. She didn't return the glance. She gathered her documents, thanked her attorney, and turned toward the gallery. Santiago stood before she reached him. "You okay?" he asked. She exhaled slowly. "Better now." They walked out of the building together, not speaking until they reached the sidewalk. "Thank you for coming," she said. He tilted his head slightly. "You knew I would." "I did. Still means something." They reached her car. She leaned against the door, looking up at him. "Do you think I was too harsh?" "No," he said. "You were honest, and the truth deserves its voice." She smiled faintly. "You're good at helping me see myself clearly." "I just hold the mirror," he replied. "You're the one standing in the light." She touched his arm, just briefly. "Let's go get the boys." He nodded. They didn't speak again until they pulled into the preschool parking lot. Jonah and Noah came running toward the car, backpacks bouncing, faces flushed from afternoon play. Santiago opened the back door. They scrambled in. "Can we get pizza?" Jonah asked immediately. "With extra olives," Noah added. Kinley laughed. "You two never stop eating." "We're growing," Jonah said seriously. "That's what Doc said." Santiago buckled Noah's seatbelt. "And I stand by it." Kinley looked back at them from the driver's seat. These boys, this life, no longer built on hoping someone would stay, now rooted in someone who had already proven he wouldn't leave. Santiago didn't announce his devotion. He showed it, in peanut butter sandwiches with the crusts cut off, in science fair posters carried across muddy parking lots, in lullabies hummed in a language the boys didn't fully understand but trusted anyway. It started with a toolbox. He arrived one Saturday morning with it tucked under one arm and blueprints sketched on. Loose paper, plans for a backyard fort Jonah had mentioned once while playing with blocks. Kinley leaned in the doorway, coffee mug in hand, watching him hammer foundation stakes like the kids' laughter depended on it. "You know this makes you the favorite, right?" she said. He looked up from the wooden frame, sweat already beading at his brow. "I'm not competing. Exactly why you're winning." By mid-afternoon, the structure had walls, a roof, and a "No Moms Allowed" sign written in crayon. Jonah and Noah dragged pillows inside, emerging only to hand Santiago a juice pouch like he was part of their squad. Kinley stood by the window, watching them. There was no camera to capture the way Jonah leaned into Santiago's side or how. Noah's hand kept brushing his sleeve just to make sure he was still there, but she didn't need a photograph. Some moments printed themselves onto memory. Later that week, Kinley woke to the sound of quiet footsteps outside her bedroom. She checked the time. Just after midnight, she rose and found Noah in the hallway, standing in his pajamas, his small hand pressed against his belly. "Stomach hurts," he whispered. Kinley scooped him into her arms and carried him to the couch. She sat there rubbing circles on his back when a knock came at the door. She didn't remember calling anyone. But there Santiago stood, keys in hand, barefoot, a t-shirt thrown on over pajama pants. She opened the door, confused. He shrugged. "Felt like I should check in." She blinked at him. "Middle of the night?" He nodded. "Something pulled me." Inside, he took Noah into his arms gently, rocking him like he'd done it 100 times. Kinley didn't ask how he knew. She just let it happen. Noah fell asleep on his chest within minutes. They didn't speak much after that. But when the sun began to rise, and Santiago was still sitting there holding her son, Kinley leaned into the side of the couch and let her head rest against his shoulder. "You never flinch," she said. Santiago looked down at the boy in his arms. "They don't deserve flinching." "And neither do I," she asked quietly. He met her eyes. "Especially not you." He didn't stay for breakfast. He slipped out after Noah was back in bed, and the house was quiet again. But on the kitchen counter, Kinley found a note beside the coffee pot. "Real love doesn't clock out. See you tonight." That evening, he came back with soup and a bag of books from the local library, stories about space and sharks and robots. He read to the boys until their eyes grew heavy. He made Kinley tea, and still, he didn't ask for anything in return. Not a label, not a promise, not a future, just the privilege of presence. Days turned into rhythms, rhythms into rituals. Saturdays were for pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. Tuesdays, he picked the boys up from school if Kinley had late shoots. Fridays, he brought home something small, a new plant, a bottle of her favorite lotion, or a flashlight for the fort. He didn't spoil them. He stabilized them. One night, after the boys were asleep and Kinley was folding laundry, on the couch, Santiago came in from the porch holding a mason jar. Fireflies blinked inside. Caught a few, he said. Figured the boys would like it in the morning. She smiled. They will. He set it on the table, then sat beside her. I don't need a title, he said suddenly. She looked up, confused. What do you mean? I don't need to be called dad or partner or anything really. I just need you to know I'm not leaving. That's all. She dropped the towel in her lap. You're not waiting for permission? She asked. No, he said. I'm just showing up until there's nothing left to prove. Kinley didn't cry. She didn't kiss him. She reached out and held his hand, lacing their fingers together like it was the most natural thing in the world. And in that moment, she realized what she'd been feeling all along. Security wasn't loud. It wasn't grand. It didn't arrive with declarations or ultimatums. It showed up with quiet hands and consistent footsteps. It built pillow forts. It made dinosaur pancakes. It read bedtime stories. And it never, not once, asked her to shrink to fit beside it. The day had been loud. Back-to-back edits, a toddler birthday shoot, groceries, tantrums over cereal, and 2 sticky juice spills that stained her camera bag. The boys had finally fallen asleep after a long negotiation over who got the last bedtime hug. Now the house was still. Santiago was in the kitchen, rinsing a plate. He had come over after work without asking, blending into her space the way he always did, never asking for access, just making himself useful in quiet ways. Kinley watched him from the doorway. He looked different here, not because of what he wore, just a plain gray tee and joggers, but because of what he didn't need from her. That was the difference. He didn't want her to be easy. He wanted her to be real. She stepped closer. He dried his hands and turned toward her. You okay? He asked, voice low. She didn't answer with words. She stepped forward, closed the space between them, and touched the side of his face. Her thumb traced his jaw. Her breath was measured. Her heartbeat wasn't. Santiago didn't move, didn't rush. He simply waited. I want this, she whispered. Are you sure? He asked. She nodded slowly. Yes. But this time, I want to lead. Understanding flickered in his eyes, but he said nothing. She took his hand and led him down the hall. Her bedroom was warm, unpretentious, soft sheets, faint scent of lavender. No romantic setup, no candles, just her space. She closed the door. Santiago stood still as she moved closer, lifted the hem of his shirt, and guided it off. Her hands were deliberate, tracing over his chest, shoulders, spine. He let her explore, let her pace the moment. She stepped back just enough to slide the straps of her dress off her shoulders. It fell in one motion, pooling at her feet. No performance, no hesitation. Santiago's eyes roamed her body, but not with hunger, with reverence. She stepped toward him and kissed him, slowly, deeply, then moved to the bed, and sat at the edge, pulling him forward by the waistband of his joggers. Still, he didn't speak. She guided him onto the mattress, onto his back, then climbed on top. Every movement was hers, not an invitation, a declaration. She kissed him again, neck, collarbone, chest. She mapped every inch of his body with a sense of ownership she had never allowed herself before. This wasn't about being taken care of. This was about reclaiming what was always hers. When she slid down onto him, the air caught in both their throats. She moved slow, controlled. Every thrust was deliberate. She wanted to feel it all, every stretch, every friction, every sound. He gripped her hips, but didn't guide them. She gripped his hands and placed them on her thighs, just where she wanted them. The rhythm grew. Her breathing broke. His eyes never left hers. When her body trembled and her breath stuttered, she let herself come fully, unmasked, unashamed, unhurried. She collapsed forward, face in the crook of his neck. Love has so many layers. Sometimes it heals, sometimes it tests. But it always teaches us something new. What about you? Have you ever experienced a love story that changed the way you see life? Share your experience in the comments below, because your voice could inspire someone today. And if this story touches your heart, remember to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who believes in love's light. They stayed that way for a while, bodies still joined, sweat cooling between them, chests rising and falling in near unison. Santiago ran a hand down her spine. That was... She lifted her head slowly. Mine. He smiled, kissed her cheek. It was... She rolled off him and pulled the sheet over their waists. Her eyes stared at the ceiling. His fingers traced idle shapes on her wrist. "Do you know what that was for me?" she asked. He didn't interrupt. "It was me saying I trust you. Not just with my kids, with my body, with my pace, with what I decide." Santiago turned his head toward her. "I don't take that lightly." "I know." She shifted onto her side. "You didn't ask me to prove anything. That's what makes it easy to give." He leaned in and kissed her forehead. "Whatever you give me, I'll protect." Kinley smiled, and for once she didn't second-guess what came next. She had claimed her space, and this time she brought someone into it on her terms. The letter came in a white envelope with no return address. Kinley found it in the mailbox, tucked between a flyer for discounted oil changes and a reminder about school picture day. She almost tossed it with the rest, but the handwriting caught her eye, slanted, too familiar. She didn't open it until after the boys had gone to bed. Sitting at the kitchen table, lights low, a tea mug cooling in front of her, she unfolded the page and read, "I know I failed you. I know I walked away when you needed me. I'm not asking for anything except a chance to make amends. If there's a window, any window, please leave it open for me. I'm not the same man I was. I hope you're not still carrying the weight I left behind." She folded the letter back up, slower than she needed to. Her hands didn't tremble, but something inside did. She left it on the counter and walked to the balcony. The night air met her with silence. No breeze, no wind chimes, just the sound of her own breath and the uninvited echo of old wounds resurfacing. She didn't cry. She'd cried enough for him, but that didn't mean she wasn't affected. The next morning, Santiago noticed. It was small, how she held her coffee cup with two hands, how her smile didn't reach. Her eyes, how she hugged the boys a little tighter before preschool drop-off. He didn't press. He waited until she set her camera bag on the couch and rubbed her temples. "Letter came yesterday," she said. He sat across from her, patient. "From him?" He nodded once. "You don't have to read it to me. I already did. And it didn't ask for forgiveness. It asked for opportunity." Santiago leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees. "Do you want to open that door?" Kinley hesitated. "I don't think so, but I hated how fast it took me back, how quickly my mind believed maybe I'd done something wrong. You didn't?" She nodded. "I know that. But it's like muscle memory, guilt flaring in all the places I thought had healed." Santiago stayed quiet. Kinley looked up. "Is it always going to be like this? A few steps forward, then a drop back into the ache?" "Sometimes," he said. "But forward is still forward, even if you pause." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I didn't want to tell you because I thought maybe it would sound like I was comparing. You're allowed to be triggered. That doesn't mean you're unsure." "I'm not unsure." "Then there's nothing broken." She breathed in through her nose, out through her mouth. "Do you think people like him change?" "I think people like him want to believe they do. But real change doesn't come in letters. It comes in years." Kinley smiled faintly. "That sounds like something you've had to learn firsthand." He nodded. "I've been the one who left before, a long time ago. But I didn't come back with a letter. I came back with work." She crossed the room and sat beside him. "You ever fear I'll pull away from all this?" "No," he said, without hesitation. "But I respect that some days your past is louder than my presence." Her throat tightened. He reached for her hand. "It doesn't scare me." She leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. "I hate that he still has that kind of access." "He doesn't," Santiago said. That was a flare, not a key. Kinley stayed pressed against him. "I feel weak for letting it bother me. You're human for letting it touch you. You're strong for not letting it decide anything." They sat in silence, a peaceful one, carved out by trust and gentleness. She tilted her head toward him. "Do you want to read it?" "I don't need to. I think I needed you to say that." His voice was calm. "You've already chosen your peace. This is just a memory testing your balance." She closed her eyes, and finally exhaled. Santiago didn't bring flowers. He didn't cook dinner or play music or try to make her laugh. He simply sat on the living room floor with Jonah and Noah, building a domino run. Across the carpet while Kinley stood in the kitchen, slicing apples in silence. She hadn't mentioned the letter again, but he knew it was still sitting on the kitchen counter, unopened since the night before, folded and refolded as if each crease might flatten her unease. The boys were laughing, unaware of the shift in her mood. That was the mercy of childhood, how joy could exist without invitation. Santiago knocked over the first domino, and both boys shouted in delight as the chain reaction ran its course. Kinley smiled faintly. Not for the boys, not for the moment, but because Santiago hadn't asked her to be okay. He hadn't asked anything at all. Later that evening, after bath time and stories and a second round of teeth brushing, because Jonah snuck jelly beans before bed, the boys were finally asleep. Kinley sat at the edge of the couch, arms folded, legs curled under her. Santiago stood near the hallway, debating whether to leave. She looked up. "You can stay." He stepped closer but didn't sit. Kinley patted the cushion next to her. "Please." He sat, folding one leg beneath him, the other stretched toward the coffee table. "Rough day?" She nodded. "Not because anything bad happened, just heavy. You don't have to explain." "I want to," she said, "but I don't know how to say what I'm feeling without sounding like I'm retreating." "You're allowed to retreat," Santiago said. "Retreat isn't rejection." She looked at him. "You always have the right words." "No," he said, voice low. "I just stopped needing to fix what isn't mine to fix." Her throat tightened. "I was so used to being with someone who needed to be convinced I was worth staying for. You don't have to convince me." "I know." Santiago leaned back, arms resting on the back of the couch. He didn't touch her, didn't offer comfort she hadn't asked for. That was his version of patience, letting her lead without withdrawal, remaining close without demanding connection. Kinley leaned her head on the cushion beside his arm. "You're quiet tonight," she said. "Only because you needed space to hear yourself." "I don't think I like silence anymore," she whispered. "It used to be mine, but now it feels like it belongs to someone else. Like if I stop talking, his voice finds a way back in." Santiago nodded slowly. "Then fill it with yours," he said. "Sing, yell, whisper nonsense into the walls. But don't leave it empty." She laughed, tired and sincere. "Whisper nonsense? You'd be surprised how much healing happens in noise that means nothing." She reached for his hand. He took it, not with urgency, with recognition. "You won't get tired of this?" she asked. "Of what?" "This version of me. The one that backslides, the one who second-guesses her own progress." "No," he said simply, "because I'm not here for the perfect version. I'm here for the one that keeps trying." She turned her face toward him, eyes glassy. "Sometimes I don't know who I am without the struggle." "That's okay," he said. "We'll figure her out together." She moved closer until her head rested against his chest. His arms wrapped around her with no conditions, no agenda. Just presence. Time passed like that, quiet, slow, and for the first time in days, Kinley didn't feel the need to perform strength. She just rested inside it. Eventually she whispered, "Can you stay tonight?" "Of course. I don't mean just for company. I don't mean for sex." "I know. I just need you close." He kissed the top of her head. "I never planned to be anywhere else." That night, they didn't make love. They didn't even kiss. They lay in bed, side by side, fingers intertwined, breaths aligned, and hearts steady. And Kinley slept deeper than she had in weeks. Not because the noise was gone, but because someone else was holding the quiet for her. Jonah was first. He always was. "Mommy," he said, holding a green crayon in one hand and a crooked drawing in the other, "why doesn't our daddy live here?" Kinley blinked. They were seated at the dining table, afternoon light streaming in. Through the windows, a quiet breeze blowing through the screen door. Noah was across from them, building a bridge out of popsicle sticks, and whispering to himself about how trains were going to cross it. She swallowed. "That's a big question, buddy." Jonah nodded, serious. "I know. But I want a big answer." Kinley looked at him, this child with Santiago's quiet alertness and her stubborn chin. "Okay," she said. "Let's talk." She pulled her chair closer. "Your dad, the one who helped me make you and your brother, he wasn't ready to be a dad. Was he scared?" Jonah asked. "Maybe," she said honestly. "Or maybe he thought he wouldn't be good at it. Some people think walking away is easier than trying." Jonah's face wrinkled. "That's not fair." "No," she said. "It's not." Noah looked up then. "Did he say sorry?" Kinley hesitated, a little late. "But yes." Noah tilted his head. "Like how I said sorry for hiding the iPad under the bed." "Kind of," she smiled gently. "But not all sorries fix things." Jonah frowned. "Do we have to love him?" "No," Kinley said, voice clear. You don't have to feel anything you don't want to. But if questions ever come up, you can always ask me. I won't hide anything from you." Noah looked down at his bridge. "I like Santiago better." Kinley's breath caught. She kept her voice soft. "You do?" Noah nodded. "He doesn't miss pancakes, and he reads with the silly voices," Jonah added. "And he puts the toothpaste in the middle and doesn't get mad when we forget socks." Kinley smiled. "He's a good man." Jonah looked up. "Is he our dad too?" She paused, not because she didn't know the answer, but because she wanted to answer it well. "He didn't help me make you, but he helps me raise you, and he loves you like his own. Can we tell him that?" Noah asked. Kinley blinked fast. "Of course." That night, Santiago came over late. He brought takeout. He always did on Wednesdays. Chicken shawarma for her, buttered rice for the boys, pita bread he cut into hearts with scissors he kept in his glove compartment, just because. They'd already eaten by the time he arrived. The boys were on the couch with a blanket over their legs, watching a nature documentary about whales. Santiago entered quietly. Noah ran to him first, arms wide. Jonah followed, clutching a drawing in one hand. Santiago knelt to their level. "What's this?" "It's a picture of you," Jonah said, "and us, and Mommy, and the pancakes." Santiago unfolded the paper. The stick figures were smiling. His was the tallest. One small figure held a book. Another had a crown. The pancakes were floating beside them. Santiago grinned. "I love it." Jonah looked up. "Are you our dad?" The room went quiet. Santiago met Kinley's eyes. She gave a small nod. "I'd be honored to be your dad," he said carefully. "If that's what you want," Jonah whispered. "We want." Santiago pulled them both into a hug, the paper still clutched in his hand, crinkling between them. Noah peeked up. "You have to do silly voices forever." "I swear," Santiago said. "Forever and ever." Kinley stood behind them, hand over her mouth, emotion too thick for words. It was a quiet adoption. Not legal, not official, just a decision made by two boys with open hearts, and a man who had earned them. It wasn't candlelit. There were no rose petals, no violinists, no hidden photographers waiting to capture a viral moment. Just a couch, the same one where Kinley had cried after getting that letter, the same one where Santiago had let her rest her doubts against his chest. The twins were already asleep. The dishes were done. The living room was dim, lit only by a single standing lamp in the corner that made everything feel like dusk. Santiago sat beside her, one leg pulled under, the other resting firm against the carpet. He'd been quiet all evening, not distant, not distracted, just quiet in a way that felt intentional. Kinley leaned her head on his shoulder, eyes closed. "You're thinking again." He smiled. "A little." She opened one eye. "Worried?" "No." She shifted to face him fully. "Then what is it?" He reached into his hoodie pocket, pulled out nothing. No ring, no box, just air. And then he slowly got off the couch and knelt, not on one knee but both. The posture made Kinley sit up straight. "Santiago, I don't want to rush anything," he said. "I know we've made this home slowly, one wall at a time, but there's something I need to say, and I need to say it this way." She nodded, words caught somewhere in her throat. "I've watched you build your life back from ruins. You didn't rebuild what was lost. You made something entirely new, and I got to witness it. That alone would have been enough." He took a breath. "I didn't come into this needing to be needed. I came because your life, your boys, your rhythm felt like something I could protect, not possess." Her hand came to her chest. "Kinley," he said, voice low but steady. "Whether you wear a ring or not, I'm already yours. Whether there's a ceremony or not, I've already chosen you." She blinked hard. "I kneel because I want this moment to matter, not because it's a proposal, but because it's a declaration." A pause. Then, slowly, from his other pocket, he pulled out a gold necklace. Simple, elegant, a pendant engraved with 4 stars, too large, too small. "This isn't a placeholder, it's a promise. One I've already begun keeping." Kinley took it gently, fingers trembling. "I didn't buy a ring because I didn't want to ask a question that came with pressure. I wanted to offer a choice. We can wait, or we can walk forward. I'm not afraid of either." She stared at him, kneeling in old jeans and socks, holding out a necklace instead of a diamond, and somehow it was more sincere than anything she'd seen in fairy tales. You didn't propose, she whispered, eyes shining. I didn't need to, he said. You've already said yes to everything that matters. Kinley leaned down slowly, pressed her forehead to his, their breaths synchronized. I would marry you, she said quietly. Today, tomorrow, or 10 years from now. He smiled. Then, I guess that's a yes. She nodded. To you? Always. He rose, not with a dramatic flourish but with quiet reverence, and she placed the necklace around her neck herself. No flash, no crowd, just two souls choosing each other again and again, even before a ring ever asked. The necklace glinted softly in the mirror. Kinley turned her head slightly, watching the pendant shift against her skin. 4 stars. 4 points of light that now meant something permanent. She didn't put it in the jewelry box. She only opened it to look at the old things, the reminders of before. Bracelets she hadn't worn in years. Earrings she once bought to impress someone who never noticed. A single broken clasp from the hospital the day the twins were born. She closed the box slowly, then stood up. Santiago was in the bedroom already, half-dressed, pulling back the sheets like it was an ordinary night. But there was nothing ordinary about how her body hummed, just watching him. He looked up as she entered. Eyes landed on the necklace first, then traced down. You didn't have to change, he said, voice low. I didn't, she answered. This is still me. And it was. She'd slipped off the hoodie and leggings. Now she stood in soft silk, deep plum, the hem grazing her thighs, one shoulder bare. Her curls were untamed, the kind of wild only a woman fully in her element could wear. Santiago's breath caught. Kinley walked toward him, barefoot, slow. She didn't ask permission. She straddled him the moment he sat down on the edge of the bed. Their faces were close, mouths not touching, eyes not blinking. You always treat me like I'm breakable, she whispered. You've been through a war, he murmured. I'm done surviving. Tonight, I want to conquer. His hands found her hips. I'm listening. No past, no future, just this room, this skin, this yes. Santiago leaned forward but didn't kiss her yet. Yours. Every part. She undid the buttons of his shirt slowly, not to seduce, but to claim. Every scar, every muscle, every quiet promise written across his chest became hers again. His hands moved under the hem of her nightdress, not in a rush, not in hesitation, just in reverence. They fell into bed together, not like a first time, not like a reunion, but like a language they'd built. Every touch was fluent. Every gasp understood. There was no conversation, only breath, only the sound of silk against skin, only the sharp exhale when one of them moved just right. Kinley traced his spine with her fingertips. Santiago gripped the curve of her waist with both hands, and when they found release, it wasn't in the form of surrender, it was a declaration. This wasn't about healing anymore. It was about joy, about choosing pleasure not as escape, but as celebration. They lay in the aftermath, Kinley resting atop him, her ear pressed to his heartbeat. You okay? He asked. I feel more than okay. He kissed her shoulder. Then I've done something right. She chuckled softly. You've done everything right. His arms wrapped tighter around her. You're not waiting for a ring? She shook her head. No, I'm not waiting for anything. I'm already here. They didn't talk about what came next, because not every love story needed to leap toward forever. Some just needed tonight, and tonight was already perfect. It started with a message in her inbox. A women's support group she used to follow, quietly, anonymously, was now asking her to speak. Not write, not type, speak, in front of people. At first, Kinley laughed, the kind of nervous laughter you give when someone mistakes you for someone braver. But the woman who sent the message wasn't a stranger. She'd met Kinley briefly at the bookstore downtown. A single conversation apparently had left a mark. I remember what you said about rebuilding, the message read. We need more voices like that, not polished, just honest. Kinley hovered over the response box for 2 days. Then she typed, I'll come, but I won't glamorize pain. The reply came instantly. Good, we've heard enough of that already. The first time she stood in a community center. Nothing fancy, just folding chairs, free coffee, and women who had stopped expecting much from anyone. Kinley didn't bring notes. She wore a long black dress and her new necklace, the stars resting just above her heart. I'm not here because I got it all right, she began. I'm here because I stopped apologizing for what went wrong. That was all it took. Heads lifted, pens scribbled. One woman wiped her eyes with the edge of her scarf before Kinley had even reached the second sentence. She didn't dramatize her past. She didn't embellish her recovery. She told the truth in layers, about betrayal, about giving birth alone, about learning to cook for 3 on, a cashier's salary, about nights she cried after the boys were asleep, about mornings she got up anyway. But she also spoke about joy, about the first time Jonah called her brave, about the way Noah fixed her tea when she was sick, about the man who showed up late but never left, and about how no chapter should be titled "The End" just because one person walked away. You don't need a platform, she said. You need a mirror. Look at yourself. You made it here. You're still rising. That line got a standing ovation. 2 months later, she spoke at a conference. 300 women. Santiago was in the back with the twins. Kinley looked out into the crowd, heart thudding against her ribs. She thought it might collapse from pressure. Instead, it expanded. Her voice didn't shake. Her message didn't stutter. She told the truth again, this time more structured, more refined, but still raw. Still her. My story used to be a closed file, something I survived and never wanted to revisit. But that's not where the power lives, she said. It lives in the retelling, in making the past useful, not just painful. At the end, she looked up at her sons, both grinning. Santiago raised his hand in a fist, not as a cheer, but a quiet symbol of solidarity. Kinley smiled, not for applause, for herself, for the girl she used to be, for the woman she now was. On the ride home, the boys sat in the back seat arguing about who clapped louder. Santiago reached over, squeezed her hand. You owned that stage. I didn't need to, she said, eyes forward. It's not about owning anything anymore. It's about showing up as I am. He looked at her like he'd just fallen in love all over again. Kinley let the silence settle around them. For once, it didn't feel empty. It felt earned. He hadn't been back here since that night. Not since the storm. Not since the power outage. Not since he held Kinley's trembling hand in a hallway while Jonah screamed from the emergency room and she refused to cry. Santiago stepped out of the car now, expecting nothing but memories. But something was off. The hospital wasn't in chaos. It was unusually quiet, especially for a late Saturday afternoon. The sun was beginning to dip, casting amber streaks across the lot. He made it past the automatic doors and froze. Lilies. A full bouquet stood in the middle of the check-in counter, resting in a clear vase. No note, no tag, just lilies. His breath caught. He turned to the nurse behind the desk. I'm here to see Kinley Moore. She asked me to meet her. The nurse didn't reply. She only smiled, soft and secretive, and pointed toward the hallway. Santiago blinked. She's not injured or anything, right? Another smile. This one wider. She's waiting. He walked, slowly at first, then faster, drawn by something he didn't yet understand. He passed room 208, the one they waited in that night. He paused when he saw the door slightly ajar at the end of the corridor. Something moved behind the glass. Then it opened, and Jonah stepped out, wearing a bow tie and holding one side of a banner with both hands. Hey, the boy said, beaming. Before Santiago could respond, Noah appeared beside him, gripping the other side of the banner. The fabric stretched wide, painted in blue and gold block letters, Stay, forever. Not just tonight. Santiago's heart flipped. He crouched to meet their eyes. You two planned this. Noah shrugged. She said, we were part of the team. Jonah added, we picked a banner color. I can tell. Behind them, the hallway door creaked open once more. Kinley stepped into view. She wasn't wearing a gown. She wasn't in heels. She wore the same boots from that stormy night. Same fitted jeans. But her top, silk white, tucked at the waist, shimmered under the soft hallway light. Her necklace swung as she walked. Santiago stood, lips parted. I thought I was picking you up, he said. You are, she replied, but I needed to bring you here first. He looked around. Why? She motioned toward the room behind her. Come inside. He did, and there it was. Room 210, the same one where she cried beside Jonah's bedside, now filled with lilies, dozens of them, some on the counter, some by the bed, some on the floor in tall glass cylinders. In the center, a small round table draped in white cloth, 2 chairs, and a simple brown box. Santiago stared. I came here alone that night, Kinley said softly, and I remember thinking, if he stays tonight, maybe that's enough. He turned to her, eyes sharp. But you did more, she continued. You stayed for every tomorrow. Santiago stepped closer. Kinley reached into her pocket, pulled out something small. No velvet, no glitter, just a silver key on a black cord. She held it out. No diamonds, she said. No speeches, just this, the key to our home, our real one, the one we're building. Santiago took it slowly. Are you? She nodded. I'm not asking you to marry me tonight. I'm asking you to never let me forget it. I have a say. He swallowed. This is your proposal? No, she whispered, stepping forward until her hand was flat on his chest. This is my declaration. The boys came in behind them. Jonah clapped. Noah tried to whistle and failed. Santiago laughed, chest shaking. Kinley leaned in and kissed him once. Soft, certain. Then she whispered, welcome home. The courtyard wasn't grand. It didn't need to be. A small garden behind the library, lanterns hanging from overhead wires, soft piano filtering through hidden speakers. The twins were off to the side with cupcakes and juice boxes. A few close friends stood scattered, none with phones out, none recording. This wasn't for the world. It was for them. Santiago stood near the center, wearing the same navy blazer he'd worn to Jonah and Noah's parent-teacher meeting. Clean, classic, nothing flashy. His fingers kept reaching up to his collar. He wasn't nervous, just confused. Kinley had texted, be at the garden, wear something you'd want me to say yes to. He hadn't replied, just showed up. Now the music changed. The soft instrumental faded into something warmer, strings, full-bodied, slow, like a love letter written with a bow. Heads turned, and there she was. Kinley stepped through the gate in a white dress. Not bridal. Not dramatic, simple, sleeveless, with a satin ribbon tied at the waist and a neckline shaped like grace. Her curls framed her face. Her necklace, the one with the stars, sat proudly at her collarbone. Santiago's breath hitched. He'd seen her wear red, black, even deep green that made her eyes look like moonlight. But this was a woman who wasn't dressing for attention. She was dressing for truth. She stepped forward, heels silent on the stone pathway. Then she stopped, right in front of him, took a breath, and dropped to one knee. A gasp rippled from someone in the back. Santiago's eyes widened. Kinley didn't smile yet. She held something in her hand, not a ring, but a tiny folded note. She didn't offer it. She read from it. Once upon a time, she said softly, I stood in a hospital hallway wondering if I could make it one more hour, not one more year. Just one more hour. You showed up and said nothing. You just waited. Her voice didn't shake. I never believed in beginnings. I believed in survival, in endurance, in second shifts and broken zippers, and putting my boys first so I wouldn't have to feel what I'd lost. Santiago's throat tightened. She looked up at him. Then you asked me to believe in something else, in us. Now she reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple ring. Platinum, smooth, no diamonds. No shine, just solid, like her. I'm not kneeling because I'm afraid you'll leave, she continued. I'm kneeling because I've never stood taller than I do in this moment. The sun dipped behind her. Her dress seemed to catch the last of the light. She held up the ring. Will you marry me? Not because I need saving, but because I finally believe in beginnings. Silence. Then, Santiago dropped down beside her. One knee wasn't enough. He went down on both. Took her hands. You already had me. She slid the ring onto his finger. He didn't cry, but Kinley did. Not because she was overwhelmed, but because peace has a way of loosening everything inside you, especially the tears you once held like armor. Behind them, the boys began clapping with sticky fingers. One voice in the crowd whispered, "That's how it's done." And Santiago leaned forward, pressing his forehead to hers. "No one's saving anyone," he whispered. She nodded. "Just choosing," she said. "Exactly." The ring was barely on his finger when Santiago leaned forward. He didn't speak. He kissed her, in front of everyone, in front of the twins, the friends, the garden lanterns glowing gold, in front of the years they lost and the ones still waiting. It wasn't a possessive kiss. It was promise. Kinley melted into it. No need to breathe. No fear of falling. Only the ground beneath them, the history behind them, and the forever they were now stepping into, together. The boys burst into cheers. Jonah tried to jump and clap at the same time, which mostly looked like flailing. Noah shouted, "They did it!" as if it were a race, and they'd just won the gold. People laughed. But Kinley didn't let go of Santiago's hands. Even when they stood again, even when the music came back, even when the lights dimmed and the garden returned to stillness. Weeks later, the lake shimmered like brushed glass. Their wedding was small. No bridal party. No gown with 20 feet of train. Kinley wore ivory, bare shoulders, a deep 5 down the back, a slit that caught the breeze. Her curls were pinned half up, the rest tumbling freely. Her boys stood proudly at the edge of the dock holding the rings. Santiago wore a charcoal suit, sleeves rolled at the cuffs, collar open. No tie, because joy didn't need formalities, only truth. Their vows were handwritten. Kinley read hers slowly, with pauses, with depth. She didn't talk about being rescued. She talked about rebuilding, about nights she almost gave up, about mornings that hurt less, because his voice was the first thing she heard. Santiago's vows were quiet, measured, not poetic, but heartfelt. He promised nothing eternal, just presence, just patience, just the kind of forever you grow into, one act of faith at a time. Then, she looked him in the eye and said, "I, Kinley Moore, choose this life." Not his name, not a title, just hers, because choosing someone doesn't mean becoming them. It means bringing yourself fully to the table. Santiago kissed her again, and this time, the boys tackled them both. A year later, laughter echoed off the kitchen walls. Jonah and Noah turned 7. Kinley lit the candles on 2 cakes, one blue, one orange, because apparently, sharing a womb didn't mean sharing frosting preferences. Santiago carried in the balloons. One popped on the doorway and made everyone scream. No one stopped laughing. 3 years later, she was on stage in New York, microphone in hand, telling a room full of women how love isn't always loud, but it should always feel like permission to breathe. Santiago watched from the back row, hand resting over his heart. 5 years later, the house in Beverly Hills was quiet at sunset. Jonah had a telescope on the roof. Noah had built a robot arm out of scrap metal. Santiago was cooking. Kinley walked through the hallway barefoot, wearing his hoodie, a novel in one hand, and a glass of red in the other. Peace lived here now. Not silence, not perfection, but joy. Joy that had been chosen daily. Joy that was earned. And every time Santiago looked at her, every time Kinley laughed out loud in a way she never used to, it reminded them both. Forever didn't begin with a ring. It began the moment they said yes to healing. Together. Fully. And always. Thank you for spending this moment with us here at CedarLight Love Stories. Every story reminds us that love, whether gentle or fierce, has the power to shape lives. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of today's story touched your heart the most? Drop it in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss another chapter of love's beautiful journey. Until next time, keep love alive.